Hello, my friends. I have to say, this is my first in-person event since 2020, and oh lordy, does this feel both weird and exciting and amazing. Hi, welcome to Cocktails for a Cause. For those of you who are joining us virtually, thank you for being in our virtual space. And for those of you who are here in person, we are just thrilled to see you all and to finally be able to be in community together. Before we really dive in, I want to recognize that we are together on the unceded Coast Salish, Stillaguamish, Duwamish, Muckleshoot, and Suquamish territories. We encourage you all to visit realrentduwamish.org for concrete steps that you can take to support the leadership of the Indigenous peoples of this land. My name is Vanessa Torres Hernandez. I use she, her pronouns, and I currently serve as the Integrated Advocacy Director at the ACLU of Washington. Thank you. But more importantly, for tonight's purposes, I am the Secretary of the Legal Voice Board of Directors, and this is my first time with you as a board member. So I joined this board right at the beginning of the pandemic, and I've had the delightful experience of meeting in person for the first time board members who I've spent so much time with on Zoom meetings over the past couple of years. And I'm really grateful to see not only my fellow board members, but also the staff, volunteers, and friends. And we're grateful to all of you for continuing to wear your masks while you're not eating and drinking to continue to show love and care for our communities. So Legal Voice couldn't have continued its critical work throughout this pandemic without the support of its sponsors. And I'm going to be giving a lot of thank yous right now, but I want to say that I'm so delighted to see so many of our sponsors in person and online. So let's give some love and support to our 2022 sponsors, Davis Wright Tremaine, McDonald Hogan Bayless, Pacifica Law Group, Skellinger Bender, Stoll Reeves, and Summit Law Group. Let's give them some love in life and some love in the group chat. I'd also like to recognize some elected officials who've been able to join us tonight. King County Council Member Rob Dombowski, Representative Jamila Taylor, former Senator Karen Frazier, and Judge Anthony Geip. Thank you so much for being here with us. And for my fellow board members, you fabulous humans, and Legal Voice staff, you fabulous humans, can you all just give a little wave so that folks can thank you too? And last, in my long list of thank yous, I want to give a very extra shout out to Perkins Coie, Davis Wright Tremaine, and Stoll Reeves, who have been donating unbelievable amounts of time and talent to some very important and very challenging legal work. And so thank you for your generous support to those folks and for killing it in the courts. I'm really excited for tonight's program because it highlights two of the things that brought me to Legal Voices Board in the first place. The organization's commitment to the leadership of women of color and its commitment to community-driven advocacy. Our guest speaker tonight is Sylvia González, an organizer with Casa Latina. Woo! Casa Latina is a nonprofit organization that advances the power and well-being of Latino immigrants, knowing that their advancement is central to the economic and democratic life of this country. Sylvia works at the local and as a national leader to advance the interests of domestic workers. You'll learn more about Sylvia in a minute, but I want to highlight how important work to advance the interests of domestic workers is, especially in this critical moment. The COVID-19 pandemic laid bare 100% the economic inequalities that plague our community. Women are economically disadvantaged by this pandemic. People of color are disadvantaged by this pandemic. Low-income workers are disadvantaged by this pandemic, and the folks who live at the intersections of those three identities are the most impacted by this pandemic. And as those of us who are excited to gather together, to be in space, to put this first phase of the pandemic behind us, we also have to remember that it is critical that we fight together to build a future that works for all of us. And in building a just economic future for everyone, it is also critical that we follow the leadership of women of color who know what it is going to take to build a just economic future. So to kick off our program, to introduce Sylvia, I'd like to introduce Legal Voice Senior Staff Attorney Andrew Kashyap. Prior to law school, Andrew was a community organizer. Give it up for community organizers. Who spent a decade in BIPOC communities in Providence and in New York City. And when Andrew was organizing, he was exposed to lawyers who provided legal support to community movements on public housing campaigns, immigrant workers issues. Those folks called themselves community lawyers. And that's a model Andrew was inspired to follow, and it's a model that legal voice attorneys aspire to replicate. Andrew has worked as an attorney at the National Employment Law Project, the Urban Justice Center, and at Columbia Legal Services before joining Legal Voice. His work has been primarily around immigrant and low-wage worker issues, like domestic work, hotel work, farm workers, and at Legal Voice, he focuses on economic justice. Andrew's work, in partnership with Casa Latina and with Sylvia, is truly fantastic, and I'm honored to call him up to the stage. Andrew, come join us.
Oh, thank you so much for that kind introduction, Vanessa. Hi, everyone. Again, I'm Andrew Kashyap, and I use he, him pronouns. I'm super excited to introduce our featured speaker, Silvia González of Casa Latina, with whom I collaborate on the fight for domestic workers' rights that she's a longtime leader in. And before introducing Sylvia, I just want to provide a little more context for Legal Voice's support for Casa Latina and connect it to our evolution to centering race equity and community lawyering. Because our work with Casa Latina is just one example among several others that provide a good opportunity for showing the potential of that shift in our advocacy. As some of you know, over the past 4 years, Legal Voice has been on a journey to transform our organization to center racial justice within our gender justice mission. This journey involves ensuring our work adequately supports Black, Indigenous, and people of color communities in recognition of the multiple and intersecting oppressions that BIPOC communities face due to systemic racism. And one key tool that we've embraced as we make that shift is community lawyering. The essence of community lawyering is to build systemic change that is led by directly impacted communities. And there are a few key elements that we wanted to pull out from this short definition. Community lawyering is about centering racial justice since it prioritizes work with the most marginalized communities. That means BIPOC communities as well as women and LGBTQ+ communities at those intersections. And our work with domestic workers is one example of that, as domestic workers are 90% women and a majority are BIPOC as well. It involves deep relationship building with community in order to understand the community's vision and build lasting trust. And Legal Voice staff have been devoting significant time and space to the humanity-centered work of relationship making as we've made this shift. We've developed close relationships with trans-led organizations, reproductive health and rights organizations, and groups focused on sexual harassment, among others. And finally, building community power and leadership requires us to reflect on our privilege as lawyers and our organizational power, and put both in service to community. So overall, community lawyering holds the potential to be a more community-led and effective way for lawyers to advance social change. So that brings us to our collaboration with Casa Latina. Legal Voice and Casa Latina have built a close relationship over the past 3 years, and that spawned work on a number of fronts to increase the rights of domestic workers. And I just want to mention a couple of quick examples as a preview to Sylvia's presentation. We're working on a campaign together in Seattle to ensure domestic workers have access to paid sick and paid time off. Seattle has paid sick on the books for the past 10 years, but domestic workers can't access that right. And this campaign is part of a national movement that's building off similar laws passed in San Francisco and Philadelphia, which is to say this is a nationwide problem for domestic workers of lack of access to paid leave laws. Also, we're working to end the exclusion of domestic workers from Washington State's workers' compensation law, which is an exclusion present in Idaho also. We're part of a state work group pushing the legislature to end this exclusion, and we're centering the voices of workers themselves in this policy effort. As Sylvia and a colleague of hers who's a former day laborer also sit on that work group with state agency staff. So both these efforts reflect how domestic workers remain excluded from basic labor rights in this country, and that exclusion is grounded in the legacy of slavery and anti-Black racism, and it's just another sign of how entrenched white supremacy and structural racism are in this country. And Casa Latina has been a key leader nationally and locally in this movement to end this longstanding injustice for domestic workers, which is why we're so honored at Legal Voice to be able to support Casa Latina in this important social change movement led by domestic workers. So I hope that helped provide a quick backdrop for how Legal Voice's community lawyering approach is helping to support community and to integrate racial and gender justice. And with that, I'm thrilled to introduce Sylvia González. Sylvia is coordinator of Casa Latina's Mujeres Sin Fronteras program that organizes house cleaners. She's also co-chair of the Domestic Worker Standards Board, which is a unique Seattle City Commission focused on domestic workers. She's also a former board member of the National Domestic Workers Alliance, a key organization in the movement for domestic worker rights. And Sylvia is also a house cleaner herself amidst everything else. So simply put, Sylvia is a powerhouse leader and inspiration in the local and national domestic workers movements. And I'm so honored to call Sylvia to the stage. Sylvia.
Buenas noches a todos. Antes de comenzar, me gustaría reconocer y traer a esta sala a todas nuestras mujeres ancestras que han sido parte del movimiento por los derechos de las trabajadoras del hogar.
Good evening to everybody. Before beginning, I would like to recognize and bring to this room all of the women who are our ancestors who have been part of this movement for the rights of domestic workers.
Mi nombre es Sylvia González, soy trabajadora del hogar inmigrante, madre de una mujer hermosa, soñadora y con una fuerza increíble que me inspira todos los días y no me deja arrepentirme del sueño por el que llegué a este país. Una mejor educación para ella, mi hija Selena.
My name is Sylvia González. I'm an immigrant domestic worker and mother of a beautiful woman who's a dreamer with incredible strength, who inspires me every day and doesn't let me give up on the dream that I brought to this country, a better education for her, my daughter, Selena.
En el 2004 comencé a trabajar limpiando casas en California. Otra compañera y yo limpiábamos 3 casas y me pagaban $50 por día. Mi necesidad de pagar el alquiler y poner comida en la mesa era tan grande que no veía el abuso del cual yo era víctima.
In 2004, I began working cleaning houses in California. A coworker and I cleaned 3 houses and I was paid $50 a day. My need to pay the rent and put food on the table was so great that I didn't see the abuse I was a victim of.
Me mudé a Seattle y me conecté con Casa Latina en el 2011, con el programa de limpiezas y el grupo de liderazgo de Mujeres Sin Fronteras. Ahí es donde comencé a escuchar de todo el movimiento por los derechos de las trabajadoras del hogar y mi memoria regresó a los años 70 en Michoacán, México. Mi madre era lavandera y fui testigo del duro trabajo y la miseria que ganaba. Hoy, esta noche, honro su trabajo.
I moved to Seattle and I was connected with Casa Latina in 2011 with the house cleaning program and the leadership group, Mujeres Sin Fronteras. That is where I started to hear about the whole movement for domestic worker rights. And my memory went back to the 70s in Michoacán, Mexico. My mother washed clothes and I witnessed the hard work and the misery that she had. And tonight, here, I honor her work.
Cuando empecé a limpiar casas en Seattle, no fui víctima de robo de salario porque era parte del programa de Casa Latina y aprendí a evitarlo. Pero sí sufrí discriminación por no hablar inglés. Una de las empleadoras pensaba que con gritarle yo iba a entender, y no era verdad. Todos los retos que he tenido y sigo teniendo es lo que me ha hecho a levantar mi voz y trabajar en colectivo con mis compañeras y compañeros trabajadores del hogar, que algunos de ellos hoy están aquí.
When I began cleaning houses in Seattle, I was not a victim of wage theft because I was part of the program at Casa Latina and I learned to avoid it. But I did suffer discrimination because of not speaking English. One employer thought that if she yelled at me, I would understand, but that's not true. All of the challenges that I've had and I continue having are what have made me raise my voice and work collectively with my colleagues and other workers, domestic workers, some of whom are here today.
Luego tuve la oportunidad de ser parte de la Junta Directiva de la Alianza Nacional de Trabajadoras del Hogar, por sus siglas NDWA, durante 4 años y llevar la voz de las trabajadoras del hogar de Casa Latina a nivel nacional. Esa fue una experiencia muy importante para mí. National Domestic Worker Alliance es una organización importante que ha ayudado a construir la visibilidad del movimiento de las trabajadoras del hogar y ha ayudado a capacitar a muchos trabajadores para que se conviertan en organizadores. Incluso fui al Congreso de Washington, D.C. junto con otros miembros de Casa Latina, como Enriqueta, que hoy está esta noche acompañándonos aquí, y María Duarte, como parte de una delegación de trabajadoras del hogar para promover la Declaración Nacional de los Derechos de los Trabajadores del Hogar. Este proyecto de ley fue presentado por nuestra propia representante Pamela Yoyatal en el 2019. Se está introduciendo nuevamente este año. Sí se puede, ¿verdad?
Later, I had the opportunity to be part of a leadership council of the National Domestic Workers Alliance, NDWA, for 4 years, and bring domestic workers' voices from Casa Latina to the national level. This was an important experience for me. NDWA is an important organization that has helped to create visibility for the domestic workers movement, and it has helped to train a lot of workers to become organizers. I even went to Congress in Washington, D.C. together with other members of Casa Latina, like Enriqueta, who is here today, and Maria Duarte, as part of a delegation of workers, domestic workers, to promote a national bill of domestic worker rights. This project was presented by our own representative, Pramila Jayapal, in 2019, and it is being presented again this year. Si se puede.
Para las personas que están interesadas, después Legal Voice enviará un enlace respecto a este evento de la introducción de la Carta de Derechos Nacional. Ver un movimiento tan grande en la lucha por la dignidad, el respeto y la igualdad para este sector laboral me llena de coraje y fuerza para continuar mi trabajo de organizar y construir el movimiento local, trabajando colectivamente para lograr cambios en las leyes laborales que favorezcan a todos nosotros, los 33,000 trabajadores del hogar en Seattle.
For those who are interested in supporting it, Legal Voice will send a link to that bill that is being introduced again. Seeing such a large movement in the fight for dignity, respect, and equality for this sector of labor fills me with bravery and strength to be able to continue my work organizing and building a movement at a local level, working collectively to make changes in labor laws in favor of all of us, the 33,000 domestic workers in Seattle.
Actualmente hay 10 estados y 2 ciudades que tienen declaraciones de derechos que favorecen a los trabajadores del hogar. Y Seattle fue la primera ciudad a nivel nacional en ganar una declaración de derechos para los trabajadores del hogar. Wow, es grandioso. Esto promociona derechos básicos como un salario mínimo, descansos y protección contra el acoso sexual. Y cubre a niñeras, limpiadoras de casas, cuidadoras de personas mayores y jardineros. Esta ley entró en vigencia en julio del 2019, hace ya casi 3 años. Pero más personas necesitan saber acerca de esta ley y difundir el hecho de que existe, de que tenemos derechos. También, más tarde, Legal Voice les enviará un enlace donde pueden saber más.
Currently, there are 10 states and 2 cities who have bills of rights favoring domestic workers. And Seattle was the first city in the nation to gain a domestic worker bill of rights, providing basic rights like minimum wage, breaks, and protection against sexual harassment. It covers nannies, house cleaners, caretakers of elderly people, and yard workers. The law came into effect in July of 2019, almost 3 years ago. But more people need to know about this law and spread the word that it exists. Also, later on, Legal Voice will send out a link about that.
Nuestro trabajo para aprobar esta ley fue un gran triunfo para todos los trabajadores que formamos parte de esta lucha. En Casa Latina organizamos mucho para esa victoria. Trabajé para proporcionar información a nuestras promotoras, miembros de limpieza de casa, que sirven como otra forma de conectar con una comunidad más amplia, quienes explicaron el proyecto de ley a los limpiadores de casa de casi toda la ciudad.
Our work to take advantage of this law was a big triumph for all of the workers who were part of this fight. At Casa Latina, we organized a lot to achieve this victory. I worked to provide information to our promotoras, members of the house cleaners, who worked as another way to connect with the broader community and who explained this project to house cleaners in almost the whole city.
Realizamos sesiones de escucha para concejales de la ciudad con trabajadoras del hogar en Casa Latina. Movilizamos a muchos trabajadores para cabildear y testificar en el Consejo Municipal. Y en reconocimiento a nuestro importante papel, la alcaldesa Duncan firmó el proyecto de ley en las instalaciones de Casa Latina.
We held listening sessions for city councilors with domestic workers at Casa Latina. We mobilized a lot of workers to lobby and testify at the city council. And recognizing our important role, Mayor Durkin signed the project into law in the facilities of Casa Latina.
Pero hablar de leyes, legislaciones, para mí, como trabajadora del hogar y organizadora, no es fácil. Por eso es tan importante para Casa Latina que exista la colaboración con Legal Voice.
However, speaking of laws and legislation, for me, as a domestic worker and an organizer, it's not easy. That's why it is so important for Casa Latina to have this collaboration with Legal Voice.
Recuerdo cuando conocí a Andrew, hace 4 años, cuando él y Legal Voice se reunieron con varias industrias diferentes de trabajadores de bajos salarios para discutir cómo podíamos colaborar en la política de acoso sexual. Este es un tema importante para los trabajadores del hogar y fue poderoso hacer estas conexiones con los trabajadores agrícolas, conserjes y trabajadores de hotel que Legal Voice había reunido.
I remember when I met Andrew 4 years ago, when he and Legal Voice met with different industries of low-waged workers to discuss how we could collaborate on a sexual harassment policy. This is an important topic for domestic workers, and it was powerful to make connections with agricultural workers, custodians, and hotel workers that Legal Voice had gotten together.
La relación con Legal Voice realmente ha crecido desde entonces y ha sido una colaboración poderosa durante la campaña de beneficios portátiles que estaba ocurriendo desde hace 18 meses. Los derechos que ganamos en la Declaración de Seattle son un buen comienzo, pero en el 2020 la pandemia nos golpeó duramente y nos recordó que aún se deben realizar mejoras adicionales en las políticas para que la verdadera transformación se afiance, como el beneficio de tiempo libre pagado portátil.
And since then, the relationship with Legal Voice has grown, and it has been a powerful collaboration during the campaign for portable benefits that has been going on for the last 18 months. The rights we won in the Bill of Rights of Seattle are a good start, but in 2020, the pandemic hit us hard, and it reminded us that there are still gains to be made in policies to secure a real transformation, such as, for example, the portable benefit of paid time off.
Con la pandemia, varios de los trabajadores del hogar se enfermaron. Tuvieron que cuidar de alguien que se enfermó, alguna familia, perdió su trabajo. Y lo peor de todo esto es que no tienen ningún beneficio de tiempo por enfermedad. ¿Por qué la ley de tiempo de enfermedad de Seattle no funciona para las limpiadoras de casa?
With the pandemic, several domestic workers became ill. They had to take care of someone in their family who became ill, or they lost their jobs. And the cruel part of all of this is that they don't have any benefit of sick time. Why is it that the sick time law in Seattle doesn't work for house cleaners?
El problema es que la ley de tiempo de enfermedad de Seattle está diseñada en torno a un trabajador que solo tiene un empleador. Un trabajador tiene que trabajar 40 horas para que ese empleador pueda pagar 1 hora de tiempo de enfermedad. Pero los que limpiamos casas tenemos hasta 5 empleadores diferentes por semana, con un promedio de 3 o 5 horas con cada uno. Tenemos dificultades para trabajar suficientes horas con un empleador para poder ganar tiempo de enfermedad.
The problem is that the law about sick time in Seattle is designed around a worker who only has a single employer. A worker has to work 40 hours in order to earn 1 hour of sick time. But those of us who clean houses have as many as 5 different employers per week, with an average of 3 to 5 hours with each one. It's difficult for us to work enough hours with an employer to earn sick time.
Estamos tratando de solucionar este problema para que se ajuste a la realidad de nuestro trabajo de limpieza de casas, para que podamos hacer esto también bien. Para ayudar a avanzar esto, acabamos de aprobar una importante resolución en el Consejo Municipal de Seattle. Juntos, nosotros y Legal Voice elaboramos estrategias en torno al testimonio de los trabajadores y cabildeamos a los concejales para ganar la resolución por un voto de 9-0. Sé que los limpiadores de Casa Latina estaban tan emocionados de hacer eso y ahora esto prepara el escenario para que los trabajadores participen en la redacción de esta política en la ciudad.
We are trying to solve that problem. We are trying to solve that problem to adjust it to the reality of our work cleaning houses so that we can do that well as well. To help us move forward in that, we have just gotten an important resolution approved in the City Council of Seattle. Together, we and Legal Voice created strategies around testimony from workers, and we lobbied the councilors to achieve this resolution by a vote of 9-0. I know that the house cleaners from Casa Latina were very excited to do this, and now that sets the stage so that the workers can participate in drafting that policy with the city.
We have the management meeting.
Ahora, Casa Latina y Legal Voice están trabajando juntos de la siguiente manera mientras tratamos de crear una política dirigida para los trabajadores. Primero, los trabajadores presentan sus ideas y preguntas sobre las políticas a Andrew y a otros abogados de la coalición. Luego, los abogados ayudan a dar forma a esas ideas en propuestas de políticas. Y luego, juntos presentamos estas propuestas a la ciudad y respondemos a los comentarios. Así es como va y esperamos que la política llegue al Consejo para una votación a principios del próximo año.
Now, Casa Latina and Legal Voice are working together in the following way as we try to create a policy directed by workers. First, the workers present ideas and questions about policy to Andrew and other attorneys in the coalition. Then, the attorneys help to give form to those ideas to make policy proposals. And then together, we present our proposals to the city and respond to their feedback and comments. And that is how it's going, and we hope that the policy reaches the council for a vote the beginning of next year.
También estamos trabajando para deshacernos de la exclusión de los trabajadores del hogar de la ley de compensación de trabajadores, como Andrew mencionó. Este es un decreto muy importante que falta para los trabajadores del hogar y es muy personal para mí. Hace unos años estaba limpiando un baño de mis empleadores. Me resbalé y caí. Me lastimé mi brazo y mi cadera. No había nadie más en la casa, así que me levanté y en ese momento solamente sentía un poco de dolor. Pensé en hablar a la empleadora, pero vinieron muchos pensamientos a mi mente. ¿Qué tal si no me creía y si me despedía? Así que no lo hice por miedo. Tuve que ir al doctor porque mi brazo me dolía mucho. Dejé de ir a trabajar con los otros empleadores por una semana y como no tenía beneficios de enfermedad, toda esa semana me quedé sin recibir ningún pago.
We are also working to get rid of the exclusion of domestic workers from the law about workmen's compensation, as Andrew mentioned. This is a very important issue that is missing for many domestic workers, and it is personal for me. Some years ago, I was cleaning a bathroom for one of my employers, and I slipped and fell. I hurt my arm and my hip, and nobody was there. I just got up, and at that moment, I only felt a little bit of pain. I thought about telling my employer, but a lot of thoughts occurred to me, like what if they didn't believe me? What if they fired me? So I didn't do it out of fear. I had to go to the doctor because my arm hurt a lot. I stopped working for other employers for a week, and because we don't have any sick benefits, that week I did not receive any pay.
que ahora es tan poderoso para mí que mi voz y otras voces de los trabajadores están recibiendo prioridad por parte del Estado mientras elaboramos una recomendación a la legislatura estatal para eliminar esta exclusión obsoleta de los trabajadores del hogar de esta ley. Esta relación entre Casa Latina y Legal Voice, entre nuestro movimiento de trabajadores y abogados, es una poderosa combinación para apoyar la organización que estamos haciendo en Casa Latina para avanzar en el movimiento de trabajadoras del hogar.
So now it's so powerful for me that my voice and other workers' voices are being prioritized by the state as we put together a recommendation for the legislature, the state legislature, to eliminate that obsolete exclusion for domestic workers in that law. The relationship between Casa Latina and Legal Voice with our movement of workers and attorneys is a powerful combination to support the organizing that we're doing in Casa Latina to move forward this movement of domestic workers.
Creo en mí misma, en la fuerza que represento con mi comunidad, pero con el apoyo de Andrew y Legal Voice que me dan, se siente más poderoso y siente más coraje para presionar a la ciudad y al Estado para que hagan estos cambios para los trabajadores del hogar. También creo en el poder común, un poder liberador que es cuando las personas y las instituciones usan su poder para el beneficio de todos, organizando, organizando, organizando.
I believe in myself, in the strength that I represent with my community, but with the support that Andrew and Legal Voice are able to provide, it feels more powerful, and I feel braver to push the city and the state to make these changes for domestic workers. I also believe in poder con, power with, a liberating power when people and institutions use their power for the benefit of everyone. Organize, organize, organize.
Muchas gracias por estar aquí, por escucharme y por esta oportunidad de hablar con ustedes, pero en especial a mis compañeras por ese valor de estar enfrente de los concejales, luchando por lo que muchos otros trabajadores tienen y nosotros lo merecemos.
Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to speak, for listening to me, for being here, but more than anything, for my colleagues, my coworkers, for being here, for your bravery, for pushing for these change, for these rights that many other workers already have and we deserve.
Sylvia and Andrew, thank you both so much. Wow, I am beyond inspired by, by the work, by the commitment to community, by the recognition of the generations that have fought before us, by the recognition of how much further we have to travel together, and by the remembrance, by the reminder from Sylvia that what we all need to manifest is power with, power together, power in community. So that's where this community comes in. We cannot do this work without all of us. We cannot build power without all of our power. And Legal Voice has a lofty goal to try to raise $20,000 tonight to support our work in partnership with Casa Latina and in partnership with other organizations across the state. So if you're inspired like I am by Sylvia, by the women who are here supporting her and working with her and fighting every day, by Andrew, by all of this, I encourage you to take out your phone, scan those barcodes on your table tents, or to grab one of the envelopes on your table, or click in the chat on the link to make a gift to Legal Voice tonight. Because every little bit of our gifts, every little bit of what we contribute builds our power together, builds our community, and builds our partnerships with great organizations like Casa Latina. Those partnerships are possible because of our partnerships with all of you. And if you're also a little giddy because you get to be here in community with other humans tonight, I'd consider adding maybe a little extra something to that gift. Maybe an extra 0 at the end of it if you're especially giddy, and have that extra impact. Thank you all so much for coming here tonight. I'll invite you to enjoy mingling, connecting with each other, building community and power.